Lord's Prayer. Matthew chapter 6, verse 5. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for so many of the words spoken. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. Pray then like this. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Let's pray. Lord God, as we look into your word, I pray that we would become a people of prayer. Not because it is something that we must do, demanded, but it is literally breath. That we breathe prayer because it is communion with you. That it overflows from a heart that is dependent, that is trusting, that in its weakness finds its strength in a God who is so close and dear, at the cost far greater than we could ever pay. And I pray that we would realize this as a church so that we become a church that prays, a church that cherishes the gift that has been given to us. And so we thank you for today. We thank you that you have brought those that are here. Bring us to conviction and repentance as only you can. In Jesus' name. We're going through prayer, and you have to remember what has been talked about in the past 2 weeks. Past 2 weeks has shown us what prayer isn't, because Jesus addresses what it isn't. And then He tells us why these things are not, and He wants you to know what is it. Why is it a gift, and why is it something that you cherish, and why is it something that overflows from your heart and your life? He says this: remember that prayer is that it has to be a real, honest reflection of your intimacy with God. That it is not something you fake. It is not something you stand in front of other people to do just because you want other people to think that you pray. Because you think that other people believe that a good Christian prays, and so therefore you pray and you use big words and you use phrases and you repeat things and you just go into a state of trance and repeating Father God, Father God, Father God, and you're repeating things again and again. That's not prayer. Prayer is a genuine relationship that shows up when you close your eyes and you begin to reflect and you begin to speak and you begin to have that relationship and that intimacy with God, and as you do, it overflows in words that you have spoken again and again in the very presence of God. You see, it's not something you do. It's not something you learn. It is something that happens. Just like when an old married couple, when they're able to finish each other's sentences, you don't teach them how to finish each other's sentences. It happens because you love one another, and as you have dwelt and lived and shared intimacy, you know what they're thinking even before they think it. How many times have we been amazed by wives who pull out handkerchiefs or something that the husband needs even before he knows that he needs it? He turns around and he goes, "Oh yeah, that's right. I do need that." You see, prayer is what happens in the quiet places, in the secret with God. And in the public light, it shows up. And so it cannot be faked. It is something either that you do on a regular basis. And if you just do it for the public, for the sake of other people, then that's what will be seen. But a non-intimate moment with words that are empty and it means nothing to you and to anyone else and even to God. Because it is just something you've learned to do. And second, what we have learned in the past couple of weeks is that you only earnestly, deeply pray for things that you love. If you don't love Christ, you will never cry out genuinely and intimately for His presence. It'll just be something that you don't do because you don't want it regularly. You don't want it. You don't wrestle through it at all. If you never want it during the weekday when you come and you pray about it, it will make no sense, not even to you or to anyone else, because it's not what you want. It's not real. But if it is a desperation every single week because you are always being bombarded by sin and the brokenness in this world, then your heart wants it so badly that when you stand in public, the world fades and the only thing that overflows from your heart is, I want you. We need you. We want it here. It's not something you can fake. You either want Christ or you don't want Him. If you don't love Him, then it will not show up. If you don't love this church, then you will never pray for it during the weekday. You will never go in the shower, and as you're washing yourself, as you're in the bathroom, as you're driving your car, the church and its state and the people that are broken, if it has never crossed your heart and mind at all, and you stand before other people and you say, God, bless our church and change us and make us repent, it means nothing. Because you don't care for it. Because it has never crossed your mind until someone tells you, stand in front and pray for it. Have you ever thought about a member of this very church that you claim as your own, and during the weekday, have you ever wrestled with their spiritual state? If you haven't, then you don't love this church. And you have to be able to say that, and you have to be honest. And I know that it feels like guilt and shame, but it's not. It is just the truth. This is your state, and you have to be able to say it. Because when you pray, whatever is in your heart, whatever it is your love, it will overflow. If you are broken over the state of the youth group and the drugs and all the broken relationships that they have, if you know some of the things happening in the households of the members of our church, then you will be broken over it. There's nothing that someone has to force you to say. You are genuinely broken over what they're going through every day in their life. And it comes out. What God says is what you love will come out in your prayers, and it is not something forced. It is something that is genuine, and it is something that is not forced because it is on your heart. You never have to tell a mother who has a child that is sick in the hospital to pray for that child. You don't have to convince her. You don't have to give her a Bible study and a lesson and tell her, hey, this is how you pray for your child. This is how you love the child when it is at the mercy of God. You don't have to tell anyone who loves something so deeply, so passionately, to do something, because every second of every waking moment, whether they're at work or not, that's all they are thinking about. I have a whole, so that's why I'm joking. When you love something, when you genuinely, passionately, deeply love something, you don't have to ask someone to think about it. If that is what involves your heart, you don't have to convince them, you don't have to teach them. It is something that they do. But the reality is, what the Bible and what Jesus was saying was, do you love the church? Stop saying that you want this fixed and that fixed and this is why it should be. If you don't love it at all, if you've never wrestled with it or tried to love the broken people in this place, then you don't love the church and it's not on your mind and heart. If you've never kneeled before God and said, this is what we should see and this is what we need, and you never looked upon scriptures and said, oh God, this is what we want of our church, then it isn't something you love. And if it isn't, then the best thing you can do is, for the first time in your life, say, I don't. And it's not okay. I want it to be something that consumes my heart. I want prayer to be something that overflows from my everyday wrestle of loving the members in this church. I don't want to say I love a church when when I really don't, and the only thing I love about my church is the way that I am loved by my church. That is the most honest thing that you can say today. The only thing I love about my church is how they love me, and when they don't, that is when I hate the church. But if you genuinely love the church, then when you look upon it and you see the brokenness and how they are lost and how they don't care about Christ, then your heart aches. You never have to convince anyone who loves the church that they need to pray for the church and the members of it. Because it constantly, daily overflows and it consumes their heart. Because they hear Christ's voice over the church every second. This is whom I love, and I have placed them in your care. It is beautiful to hear the truth, because for the first time in your life, you can say, this is truly where I am, and I don't want to be here anymore. I want to be there with you. I want to talk to you. I want to hear your voice and how you love this person and that. And even when my flesh and my heart hates them, you love them and you bring me to obedience to love them. Do you see? None of us will be perfect in loving this church. None of us will even be able to love all the members. You think we have a big church? No, there's like churches with 10,000 people at their door. And sometimes I sit there and I'm like, how do they love all of them? It's hard enough to love 50 people. 10,000? Can you imagine if 10,000 faces hit you every time you went to pray? Like, oh my God. See, we must remember those two things. And the thing about the first part of the Lord's Prayer, like I told you, God doesn't want you to repeat the Lord's Prayer. Like when I was reading the scriptures, some of the youth group students, they were like, right? And they were like verbatim saying the Bible verse. And I was like, properly schooled in Sunday school to memorize the Lord's Prayer. You can just shoot it out anytime, just it comes out. But I hope over the next weeks that you will come to understand what it is that you have memorized. That you have actually given thought to what it's saying and how powerful it is. And so today we're going to go through these 5 words. Our Father in heaven. That's it. The first part of it says, our. Those of us who have come to salvation, what Jesus was saying in this prayer is this. When I tell you pray this way, our Father who art in heaven, what I am telling you is this. You pray with your community in your heart. When you pray, you are never alone. Do you see the ideal prayer? What Jesus was saying is that when I saved you, you have now been included in a body, in a community. Apostle Paul says, never forsake meeting with one another. And he says, you are part of a body. Some of you are eyes, some of you are toes, some of you are arms and legs, and some of you are noses. But you are one body. So when you pray to me, it is never apart from the community in which you belong. The family in which I have placed you, the friends that I have given you. You never pray alone. And so the hour is inclusive of all those that God has placed in your life and overall the kingdom. Not just our church, but the church across the street. I remember in one article, one of the interviewer asked the pastor this question. When you pray, do you pray for the other pastors who are going to be preaching with you that Sunday? And the pastor was like, no. Do you not see that they are part of the kingdom, that they are one? Have you ever prayed for the other churches as they are coming together? It is one. And the pastor said, now that I know, I should. The hour is inclusive not only of our church, but also of other members of the universal church, the small C Catholic Church. The prayer that we pray is one that is always concerned with not one single person, Not yourself and mine, but it is always with the entire community, the entire church of all the believers around. That you come not just as a single person, but you come as part of a bigger body. That is always on your heart and mind. Let me ask you this. There are many of us who have come to church all our life, and yet the only times that we have prayed is when we need something from God for ourselves. That one moment when we said, God, I need you to fix something. I'm going through something and I need you to change that. It is me, I. Can you imagine if all of your prayer is, God, I need this. I need you to be present today. That all of our prayers can be summarized in this one phrase, I need you. But God said, the people you need to pray, the way that you need to pray is always our Father. It is us. It is you and I. It is always with the entire body in mind, that you are not some lone person who is suffering alone, who is fighting alone. That you, in your failures as well as your successes, you're part of a big body. It is a notion that you are radically made new, not to think as an individual, but for the first time in your life, to delight in the fact that you belong to a body. It is not just a moment, it is not just you saying, God, I need this, but it is you saying, it is us. We, as a church, we need this. And then when you begin to see that the church is sick, you see that we are sick. In all the prayers that is spoken, it is always that the people and the apostles, they always say, it is us. When the prophets speak, they say, they never separate themselves out. The prophets are the ones that see what's wrong with the community and how they're sinning and chasing after idols, but they always say, Lord God, we have sinned against you. And when I used to read that, I was like, why would a prophet include himself? He's the one that is preaching every week. He's the one telling people, hey, stop following after idols. Let's go after God who loves us. I would think he would be like, God, change them. Wouldn't that be a better prayer? It's like he has sacrificed all and he is preaching and being stoned and being put away. He doesn't have a home. Why would he have to say, God, change us? When he's every day dying to a point of being killed, fighting so that God's people would follow him. You know why? Because he's never separate from the body. He never thinks of himself as, oh, I am healthy, I love God, and so I am okay, but Lord God, you need to change them. Every single day, more and more, I come to that position. Every day, I think even up to this very day, I used to always be like, God, please change him, change that. And then recently, as I was wrestling through this, God was like, hey, stop praying that prayer. Why would you not say, change us? Are you not inclusive of what is happening? You know how devastating it is when you're praying for something to change and then God goes, hey, not they, but you are inclusive, we. It startles you because all of a sudden you realize, man, I'm part. When one part of it is sick, does it break you? Is it on your mind? Is it on your heart? You don't have to be perfect at this today. But this very day, you must move on from a thought every day of it being about you to a corporate body, us. There has to be at least an awareness that you do pray just for yourself and to say, no, it is supposed to be about us. Are you inclusive of the body? Are you part of it? And do you wrestle when others are broken in it? And I am telling you, even for me, it is a struggle. I've been praying for 30-some years, and yet it is a struggle. You have to wake up and say, do I see me as a part of the body? We have to see a gradual shift from yourself to the body and the community. And this doesn't happen just overnight, and it is not for you to feel bad about how you pray right now, but it is for you to shift and realize, hey, I'm going here, I'm changing and I'm moving and I'm going toward God, and I see all of a sudden less of just me and now more of us. Most important is this journey and this consuming heart that begins to include your neighbors, your friends, your family, and all the broken things in this world. Would we say that we're even close to being such a body? Not yet, but you cannot give up hope. Because we're on our way. You need to delight that we're on our way. You need to know that there are people who are praying and asking God, I want us to pray in this way. I want our church to pray in this way. Our Father who art in heaven. Every time you hear those words and every time you pray, there should be a part of you that realizes, man, I am part of a body, and as unhealthy, as broken, or whatever it is, we are moving towards, and we become a church that prays. If we don't become a church that begins to say, Our Father, either we have to change the Bible and say, My Father, who art in heaven, or we have to begin to change our own hearts and realize, maybe we think too much of us and less of all of us. The second notion, Father, is being taught to us that He is immanent, that He is present, and that He is intimate, and that He is with us. The reason why the word Father is used tells us a story about how He wants to be identified with us. The first thing that I have to address is this. When you hear the word Father, some of the questions that I get asked most commonly is, Pastor Bobby, is God male? I was like, okay. Like, I want to talk about prayer, but they're like, why does He say Father? Why can't we call Him Mother? Right? Why can't we say Mother God? Some goes even as far to say our Father / Mother in heaven, right? And then they don't want to like make women feel like they're any less or things like that, and so they say we have to include everybody. But here's the truth. God is spirit. He is neither male nor female. Do you understand? God is neither male nor female. God is spirit. He is not someone that you need to identify as male or female, but this is what we know. God Himself wants to identify Himself to us as Father. It is speaking less about gender, and it is speaking more about the type of relationship He wants to have with us. Do you understand? He wants you to see Him as He has designed fathership to be. And so instead of figuring out what it is that we want to call Him, we call Him by what He has designated Himself in our relationship to be. He wants us to see Him as Father. As one who, in the times that they were wrestling through, who gave the inheritance to the people. And in the same way He is saying, I give you inheritance, all that I am. I call you my son, and you receive everything that I am, and you are my own. So it is not a wrestle whether He is male or female, because He's not. Don't get that confused. He is spirit. He is beyond anything we can understand, and yet He chooses Himself how He wants to be identified. So we follow along and we say, Our Father, who art in heaven. So we call Him Father God. The most common reference used by many believers, and I have seen other people pray this, and I think it was probably in some sermon, and they said, Abba Father, right? And it is this intimate word, and in the ancient languages of the Bible, Abba Father. And what sermon I have heard from the past is that it denotes a little child when he's coming to Daddy. It's like, Daddy, right? And he's saying, Daddy, Daddy Father, Daddy Abba. And so some people pray that way, as if they are like this baby praying to God, and they're like, Abba Father, Daddy. But I think it speaks far less of some infant state and crying out to God saying, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. It's far more a reference used to talk about an intimacy that's supposed to be shared between a father and child. It is something that speaks true to the inheritance. It is something true to the very character of God. That one day you're going to reflect the beauty of who He is. The truth that overflows from His heart. How He's consistent. He's perfectly just and perfectly loved at the same time. He is love. He is just. And one day you're going to reflect it because you are His. It's not about you standing and saying, Abba, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. It's not about a title. It is about who He is and who you are. What we can never forget is by what cost this intimacy is offered. At what cost was God made near to us? First, Jesus became Emmanuel, and Emmanuel means this, God with us. The God of the entire universe who is perfect in His relationship. He doesn't have any need. Imagine this God who has no need. When the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit were together, before the universe was created, He was perfect. He has no need for us or to create us or to sacrifice Himself. But what God has decided is that He would make us, and not only make us, but knowing that we would fail, they agreed from before time began and said, you will die so that I can restore them into this relationship, that I will be their Father for eternity. Jesus came and emptied Himself of the perfect relationship and His divinity so that we can be close to Him. Let me ask, how far would you go to keep a relationship and its intimacy intact? For those of you who have graduated high school, I remember when I was in high school, that on my last senior year high school yearbook, and even junior high yearbook, I had hundreds of friends who wrote in that yearbook, friends for life. Right? Keep in touch forever. They gave me some random phone number that I bet if I call, it's like some stranger's gonna pick up. Friends for life. We will be lifers together. None of it happened. Right? College, all the hundreds upon people and people that I've met, professors and teachers and everyone in my life, and they have all, we have shared in these intimate things in our lives, and they have said that we will be close forever. How many of those friends can, after college, can you say that you have sustained? And then even among all the friends that you have, even now, how many of you would say that you are intimate with them? That through the highs and the lows and the broken states and all the things, when you are rejected by everyone in the world, are those friendships going to last? That till your last breath you can say, here are my friends. That if I have cancer, that if I fall at the end of the earth and I do something that's horrific, that they will hold my hand and they will cry with me and they will walk with me. You see, that's the intimacy it's talking about. But here, that intimacy lasts 40 years, maybe. Some friendships, if they last longer than 50 years and it is not your marriage, you would say, man, you have succeeded in the area of relationships. What is the length of friendship that you have experienced? High school friends, 4 years. College friends, 4 years. How many friends can you say have lasted more than 20 years? 40 years, 50 years. To a point on your last breath that your wife, your family, and maybe that friend will stand next to you and say, I can't believe you're going, and that they would weep tears watching you as you pass and your last breath is given. How many? At what cost to them would they sustain that relationship? When you turn around and you don't want to be part of that, when you tell them, what about all the friends who have stabbed you in the back? What about the past boyfriends and girlfriends who told you that they loved you from the beginning and then turned away and not loved you anymore? Think about all the relationships that have failed again and again, and when it started with such promise and such love. What cost will any of these people go to sustain such friendships? How many of your friends currently can you say that they will be there on your last breath? What I am telling you is this. Keeping a friendship for the long haul, it costs you a lot. That when they call 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and their heart is hurting, you talk to them and you walk them through those difficult moments when they're being a dingbat and they're making all the wrong choices in their life. You still love them. And when you are falling apart, they're the ones that cry with you and sit with you. The cost is enormous to maintain a friendship to the very end when you don't even want to be with them because they annoy you every second that they are with you. What Jesus was saying was this: I surrendered heaven and earth, and I even went to the cross and I died when you were spitting at me and you were doubting every moment of my love for you. You know what it cost me to sustain you and I? Everything that I have and more. And I would pay it all because I want to be intimate with you of every second of every moment till your last breath, and when you die, I want to bring you home and I want to love you for all eternity. No man, no woman on this earth will be able to love you as Christ has loved you to sustain that relationship. The intimacy that He is offering is coming at the highest cost. And the funny thing is, we give nothing to have that friendship. Everything you do for the church, everything you will ever do for God, will always be a response to the fact that He loved you first when you hated Him. You know why the gospel is beautiful? Because when you didn't want Him and you treated Him like that friend who annoys you every second and you turned your back and you said, you know what, I hate you, get away from me. He kept coming after you and He paid it all. Until you woke up one day and realized, man, that is the one friend who loved me. And when you came, He never held it over your head and said, man, you messed up. You know what I have to pay for you? He never mentions what He does. He loves you at the moment and He tells you the hope He has for you. And He says, I have loved you from beginning of time. I have known you and I know who you will be, and I will love you and I will make sure that I pay it all so you never doubt that I am for you. This is what it means when you pray, Father. It is a strength and it is a courage to love when you are unlovable. You know what it means to be a father? That when your child is sick and they're crying and they're waking you up and you don't get to sleep any night. And this father has spoken when his daughter had snot all up in her nose and she couldn't breathe and nothing worked. He had to stick his mouth over her nose and suck out all the nasty mucus from her nose and her mouth so that she can breathe. That is a father's heart. He would eat snot so his daughter can breathe for 1 second without choking on her saliva. That is a father's heart. The reason why our Father makes no sense to us is because of our broken relationship with our own Father. But when God says, I am your Father, He shows you. He doesn't let up. He even takes His own Son to the cross so that you may never doubt that word that He is your Father. Is there anything on this earth and in the universe that can separate you from the love of God? No, nothing. So when you pray, how can you pray and just be like, God, amen. Thank you for the food. Amen. He says, know what I am saying. When you get to call me Father, I have ripped the veil that divided you from me by my Son's death. And I am asking you, be near me. Taste of my goodness and my love for you every second. You are mine. The last phrase, in heaven, It denotes that he is transcendent. He is not only immanent, he is not only so close, so loving, and a Father that loves you, but he is in heaven. And what that's saying is he is far greater than you could ever imagine. When LeBron James first came into the league, and this is a funny story because my wife and I, we actually got some coupon and we got to watch him play, against the Wizards. And, Wizards is my team, kind of. Right? Like, I love them, but they're kind of like sketchy, they're not that good. But when LeBron came on the court and he was warming up, this is embarrassing, but part of my heart was like, yes, LeBron. Right? And then my wife, she actually videotaped him going up and he dunked. And it was weird because I love the Wizards, but I stood up and I was like, don't shoot. I'm a Wizards fan, but I love LeBron. And there was a part of me that was so excited in that moment. You know why I like LeBron? Because he was like Michael Jordan. When Michael Jordan played basketball, he transcended every other player. He transcended every other player so much that Kobe Bryant woke up and he said, you know what? I want to be like Mike. The song stuck in his head. And he wore number 24 because he wanted to be the next Jordan. And then he changed it to 8, and there's chaos about what he did. And then Jordan said, you know why? Look at Kobe's videotape. He does everything that I do, from the jump shot to everything else. You know why he doesn't get the respect? Because he never transcended, but he copied, and he always thought himself one less, and he was always trying to catch up to something. He looked at something and he said, I want that, and he chased after it. And everyone looks at his character and they're like, you know what, he's not that. But you know why I like LeBron? Because he came and he said, I love Jordan. There's more. I want more, and I want it for me, and I want to do this. And it is selfish, and it is not gospel and all that kind of stuff. But he transcends the game of basketball to a point where you want to be part of what he's doing, and you get excited as you watch. I missed that about basketball when Jordan was playing. Why do I give you that very weak illustration? Because in my heart, I got excited about this guy who dribbles a ball and puts it in a basket. What the Bible is saying is that God in heaven is so transcendent, you don't even know what it means when he says he is spirit. You don't know where he is. You don't even know what he's saying when he said that there is no time where he exists, because we're in time. Every second passes, we're going along. We can look back in the past. We can look to the future. God exists in no time. He created time. He says, let there be light. And the light that gives us life was created because he said it. In this world, we think that God is battling evil, as if God is this God who's like kind of afraid, and there is evil and the devil, and he's fighting against it. It's not true. God looked at the devil who challenged him and said, done with it. He's not anyone that can be challenged. He is God of the universe. We have such a weak view of God that we don't fear him. As an example, let me tell you, there was a t-shirt that went around about 10 years ago, and I was like, what the heck? Right? And I saw the picture, and celebrities were wearing it, and it had a picture of Jesus with the thorns in his head bleeding, and then it said, Jesus is my homeboy. Right? And somebody was like, ooh, that's cool. That's not cool! That's not okay! Jesus is not your homeboy. He's not someone you hate. He's not someone that you make a t-shirt out of and you wear it because you're a celebrity and other people buy it because celebrities are wearing it. He is not some figure and some icon that you put on a t-shirt to wear. He is God of the universe. If I were to tell you that the President of the United States was going to come and say hi and sit in our church and listen to the message, all of you would not just be like, so long. You like the message? No, you would be like, oh my God, why is he here? Why is he sitting among us? What the heck? Is he friends with Pastor Bobby? Like, what's going on? Like, why is he here? You would be freaking out. All your attention would be drawn to Obama. You know how we treat him? We treat him as if him coming in and him being president, who he is, deserves no more attention than what we are ready to give him, with all the more important things that we have in our life. For some of us, what we're going to eat at Chipotle after this is far more important than him. You sit here today listening to this message, and for you, what you're going to eat and how you're going to play football and how exciting it's going to be and what team is on your fantasy roster is far more important right now than the God of the universe who created the heavens and the earth and you. He is no more transcendent than your mind can imagine him to be. For you, God is some figure that you can discard at any moment. Let me read to you who God is in Isaiah chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. You know what a seraphim is? It is an angel that is so powerful. 6 wings, immense. One angel can wipe out a city. You know what happened? A host, thousands of angels surrounded the throne of God. And Isaiah could only describe it this way. Every single one of them covered their face. Why? Why did they cover their face? Because they can't even look upon God in his holiness. A figure that can wipe out a city cannot even look upon God. So he takes his wings and he covers his face. He covers his feet and he says, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything. I am here and fullness of my attention is at you. You hate everyone when you sit in front and they're always on their phone and their Facebook. My wife does this to me all the time. Put that away, talk to me. What the angels were saying was this: I'm not doing anything other than I am right here and you are all that my focus, heart, attention is at, and I'm covering my face because I don't deserve it. And to you know what they say? Holy, holy, holy is God Almighty. The most powerful beings ever created, all of them come together, cover their face, cover their feet in humility, and the only thing they can say is holy, holy, holy is God Almighty. And the Hebrew word for his glory is kavod, which means heavy. It means that God's presence is so powerful that they were overwhelmed by the intensity, that they felt like it was a train of his robe being upon them, and they were floored by the very presence of God. And you know what Isaiah's response in seeing God in verse 5? He says, woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people. Once again, he talks about we of unclean lips. There's only one response to the transcendence of God, that he is in heaven, that you are floored, that he's far greater than anything you could ever imagine. What does the first sentence tell you? This is the only way that you can begin your prayer. This is the only way you can come into the presence of God. Know how transcendent he is, how amazing and powerful he is, and at the same time, as you think about that, you don't even begin to deserve. You should be killed in the presence of God. God comes to you and he says, I will sacrifice everything I have to make you mine. If you don't come into prayer that way, you will not be lost in his presence with grace and being floored at who he is, because he is so far great than you can ever imagine. And yet, that God that is that great comes and tells you that he would give it all to have you be his. Isn't that the greatest romance you will ever know of? The more that is sacrificed to have you tells you of your worth. The reason why we're so weak in our thought about being loved by just people and our boyfriends and our girlfriends and what our hair looks like. Because you don't do this every day. You don't see a God that is so amazing who tells you, I would give it all for you. Imagine if you drank that every time you prayed. Can you imagine if every second you drank that, the greatest person you can ever imagine tells you you are worth giving it all. Every day, every time. If you begin your prayer that way, then everything is aligned. And for the first time in your life, you can pray properly. You can pray with trust. You can pray with intimacy. Jesus died so that you can have this for all eternity. Let's pray. Think of the greatest romance you could ever dream of between you and your spouse. The greatest love story. I heard about a guy who planned an entire wedding at his engagement to surprise his girlfriend. He was going to ask her to marry her, and then he planned the whole wedding for that day without her knowing to surprise her. And they got married on that day, and he went and he did everything and flew over all the people she loved so that that day they could be married. She was so overwhelmed by such a love that she stood in awe and said, "How can a man love me this way?" And she said, "I just want to be with him." That's all she could say. "I want to be with such a man that loves me in this way." That romance, that amazing, undeserved love. And as she saw it, she said, "How can someone love me this way? Knowing all of my flaws, how can someone love me this way?" Even our spouse will be unable to love us in the way that you believe you deserve. But if you become regenerate and saved, you will see a love that is so great that you will spend the rest of your life in thanksgiving with no complaint. And I wonder, looking at some of your faces, waiting for church service to finish, if you have ever tasted of such a love for you. Like just overwhelming. How? Why? Why would you ever love me this way? We're going to get there. And all I need you to do today is be honest and go to God and say, "God, our Father, our dear, intimate, loved Father who gave all in heaven that is so beyond my comprehension. I want to know that love because that is the love that I was made for. You were made for such a love. Don't surrender it for something far less." Let's pray.